In the middle of the Brazilian Amazon, surrounded by thousands of kilometers of jungle, there is an abandoned town with American street names. Rusting water towers. Empty houses built in a Michigan style. A deteriorating factory. A church nobody has prayed in for decades. Nobody got lost and built it. Nobody stumbled there by accident. Henry Ford built it. Deliberately. Obsessively. And at enormous cost. And the jungle took it back anyway. It is 1927. Henry Ford is the most powerful industrialist on Earth. His Model T has already changed civilization. His factories in Detroit are the envy of the world. But Ford has a problem. His cars need rubber. Enormous quantities of it. And rubber comes almost entirely from British-controlled plantations in Southeast Asia. Ford hates this dependency. He hates paying British suppliers. He hates that a raw material critical to his empire is outside his control. So Ford does what Ford does. He decides to build his own supply. He purchases 2.5 million acres of land in the Brazilian Amazon, an area roughly the size of Connecticut. He names it Fordlandia. And then he attempts something almost incomprehensible, transplanting an American industrial town, complete with American culture, American food, American values, directly into the middle of the world's largest jungle. The construction begins immediately and ambitiously. Within a few years, Fordlandia has running water, electricity, hospitals, schools, a golf course, a hotel, and rows of neat wooden houses identical to those in Michigan. Ford imports American hamburgers and canned peaches for the workers. He bans alcohol. He bans tobacco. He bans football, the Brazilian kind, and tries to introduce square dancing. He requires workers to carry identification cards. He sets meal times. He enforces rules about leisure. He essentially attempts to impose a Ford factory work culture onto Brazilian rubber tappers who had no interest in it whatsoever. The workers revolt. Multiple times. Cafeteria equipment gets thrown into the river. Managers flee into the jungle to escape. Ford's representatives in Fordlandia send desperate telegrams back to Detroit. Ford doubles down. More rules. More American imports. More insistence that his model is correct. But the real enemy was never the workers. It was the jungle itself. Ford's agricultural team planted rubber trees the wrong way. Instead of spacing them apart the way rubber trees grow naturally in the Amazon, they planted them in dense uniform rows, the way Ford organized his factory floor. In a factory, uniform rows are efficient. In the Amazon, they are catastrophic. Insects that never bother isolated rubber trees in the wild found the dense plantations irresistible. Caterpillars arrived in such numbers they stripped entire sections bare. The rubber trees never produced at scale. Not once. Not in the entire history of Fordlandia. Ford poured millions of dollars into a solution that the Amazon simply refused to provide. In 1945, Ford's company quietly sold Fordlandia back to the Brazilian government for a fraction of what had been spent building it. Ford himself never visited. Not once in all the years of its operation. The workers left. The managers left. The American exports stopped arriving. The jungle moved in immediately. The way it always does when humans stop fighting it. Today Fordlandia still exists, barely. A small Brazilian community of a few hundred people lives among the ruins. Some of the original houses remain, occupied or crumbling. Tourists arrive occasionally by boat, the only way in. They photograph the decay. They try to picture what Ford imagined standing here. The Amazon surrounds everything, patient and indifferent, slowly reclaiming what was never really taken from it. Fordlandia is not just the story of one man's arrogance, though there is plenty of that. It is the story of what happens when industrial certainty meets ecological complexity. When the logic that works in a factory gets applied to a living system that operates on entirely different rules. Ford understood machines. He understood efficiency. He understood control. The Amazon understood none of those things. And it won without trying. The jungle does not negotiate. It does not adapt to your schedule. It does not care what worked in Detroit. Henry Ford learned that at a cost of nearly $20 million and nearly 2 decades of failure, the trees he planted are long gone. The rubber he needed was never harvested. All that remains is a rusting American dream slowly disappearing into green. If this story stayed with you, share it with one person who still thinks money can beat nature. They need to see this more than you do. And if you want to know which other empires the jungle swallowed, and which ones are being swallowed right now, subscribe. Because that story is already being prepared. The Unmapped Record. We find what the world forgot.